Welcome to another edition of A Closer Look. I'm Mark Schein with my good friend Mark Miller. We got two bits of information. First of all, Garrett Mansfield has returned up in the booth up here. Garrett, of course, was doing baseball. He left us last year to do baseball in Wisconsin in February. A good move.
When it was snowing.
Yeah, good move on his part.
He probably left because it was snowing again.
And somebody thought we needed a clock to try to keep us on schedule, which we're not going to ignore. So we're done with that. All right, we have lots of games to review, stat stuffers, and all of our usual stuff this week. Let's get right to our review games. First of all, the Wapakoneta Redskins and the Elida Bulldogs. Wapakoneta has trailed in every game they have played this year. They did lead at half 14-13, but Elida came out with two quick touchdowns in the third quarter. One of them, a pick six by Ariza Little. It's 26-14 Bulldogs. Both teams score. It's 33-21. But then Wapak gets it going. Rob Gertzer, a TD run from 3 yards out. Mitchell Apple, a TD run from 5 yards out. It's 36-33 following the PAT. Wapakoneta goes on to win over Elida 36-33. They're 3-1 in conference play, as is Elida. The Redskins go to Bath, and Elida goes to St. Mary's, where you and I will be this week.
Should be a good one. Northwest Conference, Spencerville 21, Ada 17 in a big game. Contrast in the way that they get it done. Spencerville ran the ball for 273 yards, only threw it for 23. Ada threw it for 251 yards, but had minus 28 yards rushing, some of those sacks. Spencerville celebrated the return of Chris Picker. You see him right there. And a healthy Chris Picker really boosts your offense. They stand at 3-2, 2-0 in the league. Ada drops to 1-1. They are 3-2 overall.
The Bath Wildcats and the Defiance Bulldogs have a shootout, and there's a couple things to look at as we go through this number. How many different ways can you score during a football game? Okay,
a lot.
Because Defiance scores on a run. Bath gets a safety. It's 7-2. Okay, each team gets a TD run. Bath gets a pick six by Tayon White. It's 15-14 Wildcats. Two long touchdown runs by J.D. McNett, and we'll talk about him in our stat stuffers later on. Defiance 28-15. Bath runs a kickoff back for a touchdown. Then Stiles from Defiance gets a 5-yard fumble recovery for a touchdown. Touchdown pass by the Wildcats late in the game. It ends up 35-33 Defiance. No field goal. Other than that, I think that pretty much covered the rest of it.
Yeah, crazy game.
Yeah, they did. Bath, how about this? PATs, 1 for 5. Had two kicks blocked. Couldn't get two other ones in. The score goes 35-33 for Defiance.
Well, I've got another crazy game to tell you about, and a conversion decides this one too. In the MAC, Fort Recovery 28, Minster 27 in overtime. A crazy finish as explained to us by our good buddy Sean Boley with timeouts and conversions. For Fort Recovery, running back Will Holman, nothing out of the ordinary, 153 yards rushing and a TD, and the winning two-point conversion. The weird part of it was Minster had used their timeout. They had none left. He had blocked the extra point earlier to send it into overtime. I'm talking about Jared Hulsman, their quarterback free safety, had blocked it. They were moving him around to block another one. Take a timeout. Fort Recovery runs their offense onto the field. Instead of their kick team, they run it in with Will Holman for the two-point conversion. They win 28-27, and what a weird way to do it. But Hulsman, check these stats. 18 rushes, 137 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Threw for another 188 yards and another touchdown. And we mentioned he blocked that PAT with under a minute to go to send it into overtime. He is a player.
He is. Let's move on to our stat stuffers. And you mentioned Pickler a moment ago from Spencer. Let's go to him.
Well, Chris Picker, just back from an injury, had 194 yards and 2 touchdowns. And he is really going to boost that offense at Spencerville.
Let's go to Brennan Auer from Delphus Jefferson. Don't we mention him every week?
Every week.
Another big week for him. 25 carries, 212 yards, touchdown runs of 17, 17, and 29. Jefferson scores late. They defeat Allen East 41-32. Brennan Auer leads the NWC in rushing, 97 carries for 725 yards and 6 scores.
Bath, even though they lost to Defiance, their quarterback, Kobe Burchett, rushed the ball 21 times for 204 yards, 2 touchdowns, threw it for 74 yards and another touchdown, so he did all he could to try to get that win.
And let's talk about the other part of that, and that's Defiance's J.D. McNett. Now, he came into this game supposedly as a transfer student from Otsego, if you believe Twitter, so that he could be a wrestler. We had a great running game, 23 carries, 238 yards, 3 scores of 50, 21, and 68 yards. The 68-yarder came right before the half, and 18 seconds to go, you give up a huge play like that, kind of put the Wildcats in the hole. Defiance had scored 35 points all season. They put 35 on the Wildcats and won 35-33.
New Bremen having a better season than they're used to. They beat Parkway 34-20. Running back Avery Powers rushed the ball 22 times for 203 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also caught a touchdown, and they are off to their best start in years.
Shawnee's Johnny Capella is another guy we seem to mention every week. 2 touchdown passes for the quarterback. He was 14 of 23 with an INT for 156 yards. His touchdown passes went for 49 and 24. He also had 2 TD runs in his 17 carries, 141 yards on the ground. Touchdown runs of 5 and 17. Shawnee built a 28-7 lead at halftime over Van Wert and held on to win 35-27.
All right, here's one that's hard to believe at first glance. Arcadia, running back Trevor Brubaker, 20 carries, 415 yards, 5 touchdowns as they beat Van Loo. That's a season for most kids.
That's a big number right there. It's close to state record in a couple areas at 400 yards plus. North Baltimore's Brady Rader also in the BVC. This quarterback, 9 completions in only 13 attempts. His 9 completions went for 363 yards and 5 scores. He also ran it in for a touchdown. North Baltimore goes to 3-2 by defeating Cory Rawson 57-17.
Liberty Benton beat Riverdale 63-0. 63 is a lot of points. They did it in 30 plays, right?
30 plays, 30 offensive plays.
But Connor Greer, he scored a bunch of ways on his own. Fumble recovery for a touchdown. 2 punt returns for a touchdown, 72 and 78, so he's taking it the distance, and 2 touchdown runs. What a game for Connor Greer.
All right, well, let's move on to our fun football fact of the week, and we found out that some of our younger viewers have no idea about the play, which may be one of the most famous plays in college football history. Give us our fun football fact of the week.
Well, let's set the stage a little bit, and then we're going to show it to you. If you remember, in 1982, Cal beat Stanford on a lateral kickoff return. To set it up, Stanford, and their quarterback was John Elway, took it down and kicked a field goal to go ahead. They thought they had won the game. There's only 4 seconds on the clock, so they celebrated. They got a 15-yard penalty. Now, most times that wouldn't mean anything, right? Back them up 15 yards, which means Cal has 15 less yards to go to get to the goal line, and then they ran this play. You're going to see a bunch of laterals. You're going to see one where the guy's almost laying on the ground and lateral. That's illegal. Right there. But they keep lateraling. And then what made the play really famous? The band's on the field. And that guy got crushed.
The trombone player got hammered.
So that is the play, and that is Cal beating Stanford. The coach at Cal in those days was Joe Kapp, the former Minnesota Viking quarterback. We mentioned Elway out there, and it is probably the most famous play in college football history. Here you're going to see it again. 5 laterals, all of them backward, which is one of the rules.
Yeah.
But right there, his knee was down. And as Mark said, with instant replay, that play comes back.
Yeah, if this were done in 2017, we get the replay booth out. We decide, we can't do that. But instead, right there.
And that guy that got run over, the band member, still has that trombone on his wall, and it's crushed.
There you go.
That's fun.
Well, let's move on to where are they now right now. And this week we're actually going to do Liam Nadler.
Yeah, a week late.
Like last week when we kind of snuck that by you. Liam Nadler was a Leipzig Viking. He graduated in 2011. His team was a BVC champions in football his junior year, made the playoffs both his junior and senior year. He was a 4-year letterman in basketball, was all district and all BVC in basketball as well. He went on to graduate, of course, from Leipzig High School in 2011, National Honor Society member and a Voice of Democracy winner. He goes to Gannon University, redshirts his freshman year, then becomes a 4-year starter. Has 11,160 yards in total passing, 82 touchdowns, ran for 703, 29 scores there. Liam Nadler was the 2015-2016 Male Athlete of the Year at Gannon. These videos right here come from his days in the Indoor Football League with the Colorado Crush. In Week 10, he was the Offensive Player of the Week with 7 touchdown passes and 2 TD runs as his team defeated Wichita Falls Nighthawks 77-73.
Wow.
Liam is currently on the Leipzig coaching staff and is the quarterback coach and drew up the play in the huddle that defeated Liberty Benton back in that big game they played back, I think it was in Week 3. And while we were doing this, a little bit of research, just for fun, we got this from Gary Kreinbrink, up the AD at Lipsick. His sister, Kelly Nadler, who was a two-time All-Ohioan in volleyball with over 1,000 kills for Lipsick. She is now a junior at Ohio Dominican playing volleyball and a biology major at Ohio Dominican. And Liam Nadler, what a fun athlete he was to cover.
Big, strong guy that can move. You can see in these highlights, he ran the ball a fair amount, stands right in the pocket and throws over people because he's so tall.
All right, well, let's move on to our bright spot this week, Mark, and we've got a couple of them.
We do, and I don't know what we're going to show first. I think it might be the Fields of Faith down at Wapakoneta and the circle on the field, and then you morph that into, there you are, that's last Wednesday night, and that morphs into a circle on the field after the game on Friday night, where Wapak's FCA invited Elida's FCA to come out and pray together after the game. And like I said, the whole student section from Wapakoneta came onto the field. Both teams stayed on the field. It was a sight to behold, and a lot of people just stood there in awe as these young kids got out there and prayed after the game, after a great, very competitive game.
And there's Fields of Faith, kind of, you said, morphing into that. That was a great event last Wednesday also at Wapakoneta. And then we've been kind of focusing on National Anthem and proper behavior, and you found this picture.
Well, I picked up the OHSA magazine from last spring, which I had not seen, and I looked through it, opened it up to the centerfold, and there's the Crestview girls softball team getting ready to play in the state championship last year. And look at the coaches and the players, look at their fans behind them. That's the way you do it right.
Do it for the national
Good job.
Anthem. Yeah, good job. And I think Dave Bowen said that's actually a part of the student athlete conduct code and coaching code. If you want to be a member of a sports team at Crestview, you have to take the national anthem in that manner. Good for them. I wish more schools would do that.
Yep.
Okay, well, let's move into our question mark. And this came up during a game that we did a couple weeks ago. Is the continuous clock a good idea or bad?
Yeah, we did Bluffton and Crestview, and it kind of went on and off. It's a second half deal. If you're up by 30 points or more, they speed the clock up, almost stop it very rarely. But that game went above 30, below 30, above 30, so it was kind of going back and forth. But we talked about what's good about it and what's bad about it. Let's mention a couple of things that may not be real good about that continuous clock. It's less varsity playing time for the young kids. And I remember as a sophomore, when I got on the field, I was so scared. The next time, not so scared. And then you get used to playing. The second thing is it makes it harder for big comebacks because there's not very much time in the second half. But there are some really good things, and I think this is probably what drove it. With Saturday morning JV games, are you going to play a young kid a lot the night before and then expect them to come right back and play again? And even the WBL is doing that now, so about everybody's doing it. So that's a good thing that they don't have to do that as much. Safety of the players, number one. You know, fewer plays when it doesn't matter. Don't get them hurt. And then it prevents embarrassing scores. Now, you know, it's going to be a 30-point score at least. But for instance, I was at the Mount Union Marietta football game 2 weeks ago. It finished 69-3. Mark, I am not kidding you. It could have been 100-3. They did everything they could not to score, including punting when it wasn't fourth down and kicking field goals when you're inside the 10 instead of taking touchdowns. But this rule helps prevent that 69-0 kind of score.
Yeah, but doesn't it look a little bit odd when you see fourth quarter defense giving up points, 0, and you know part of the reason is, well, because
it skews the stats.
There you go. Okay, our preview games this week, and the game you and I will do is Elida at St. Mary's. Mark.
All right, Elida's 4-1, 3-1. St. Mary's 4-1, but 4-0 in the league. Elida had chances at Wapak, as Mark showed you, but they really struggled with run defense. Gave up 298 yards. What does St. Mary's do? They run the football. 384 against Kenton. It's going to be another one of those contrasting games, run versus pass, but even more than that, Elida's skill and speed versus St. Mary's toughness and technique.
Be an interesting game. We're going to have a chance to look forward to that, and the weather's going to be a lot better than it was last week anyway. We're looking forward to that too. All right, Spencerville and Crestview, big NWC matchup. Remember, Spencerville started the season with a couple of shaky losses, but they're up to 3-2 now. They're 2-0 in conference play. Crestview's undefeated. Talk about contrast. Spencerville is the #1 defensive team as far as yards given up in the NWC, just 258, and Crestview leads the NWC in offense at 38.8 points per game. You got that big defense. Of course, one of the reasons that Spencerville is so good defensively is they run the football and they keep it away from you. So will the Crestview defense be able to get Spencerville off the field? Now, defensively, Crestview gives up only 22.4 points per game. That's also #1 in the conference. So we got a lot of different things to look at in this particular game. Spencerville, Joel Lotz, 450 yards on the ground, 5 scores. Chris Picker, 432 yards on the ground, 4 touchdowns for them. Crestview, it's Drew Klein. Seems like it's Drew Klein to Wade Sheets all the time. 851 yards for Klein. 390 of those have gone to Sheets. Klein also has rushed for 336, and Trevor Gibbs from 314. If you're Spencerville, if you can get through this, your next 3 opponents before you get to Jefferson last week are 4-11. They set themselves up to have a good finish to the season and get Jefferson last. Crestview has Ada at home next week.
Biggest game in the MAC, Anna 5-0-3-0. Marion Local, same record. Marion Local beat Versailles by 10. They are giving up 7.8 points per game. They balance the run and the pass. Anna, good win over DSJ, 21-13. They had 245 yards rushing, and they're averaging over 40 points a game. The key here is they lost their starting quarterback. They have a younger player playing. He was good enough to win last week. They hope he's good enough to win again this week.
Well, the MASH unit at Minster, who's 1-2 with a whole bunch of injured people, they go to St. Henry this week, who's 2-1. The Minster offense puts 24.6 on the board. St. Henry, they were having a great season until they ran into Coldwater last week, turned it over 3 times, and lost 13-10. Couple of great quarterbacks, Jared Hulsman for Minster, Dylan Lange for St. Henry. Ryan Lutmer runs the ball for them. It's going to be another one of those MAC wars like we've seen and have every week.
Every week.
Well, let's put up our broadcast schedule for this week and get to the games that we're going to do on television this week, including some volleyball action, if we can get that up on the screen, and some soccer things to look at. Coldwater volleyball coming up this week. Spencerville and Crestview football. Mark and I are at Elida. We got the Van Wert Invitational, and we got Crestview Invitational coming up in volleyball. You can see Sunday night. This little gadget we're supposed to keep track of with the time on it. It went dark a long time ago, so I know we're over how much time we're supposed to do with this. You've been watching A Closer Look with Mark and Mark.